The contract, as written by Oakhurst Dairy in Maine, had this rule about activities that didn't qualify for overtime. Specifically, companies don't need to pay overtime for the following activities: the canning, processing, preserving, freezing, drying, marketing, storing, packing for shipment or distribution of 1. Agricultural produce, 2. Meat and fish product, and 3. Perishable foods. Note the end of the opening line, where there is no comma before the or. Oakhurst Dairy argued its drivers did not qualify for overtime because they engage in distribution, and the spirit of the law intended to list packing for shipment and distribution as 2 separate exempt activities. However, the drivers argued the letter of the law said no such thing. Without that telltale Oxford comma, the law could be read to exclude only packing, whether it was packing for shipment or packing for distribution. Distribution by itself, in this case, would not be exempt. Without that comma, as the judge maintained, this distinction was not clear-cut. The judge ruled for the union. The company had to pay $10 million for unpaid overtime. Quick info: I live in a small gated community, about 30 to 40 houses. However, unlike most gated communities, the sidewalk leading into the community from the outside is not gated, meaning literally anyone can come in. There's no sentry at the post next to the gate, as it is an automatic gate. You get in with either a code or a sensor, and the cameras on the sentry post are purely for show and don't work. My dad has a really bad habit of leaving the doors unlocked. All of them. The front door and the 2 back sliding doors, one in the living room and one in the master bedroom. He does this because he primarily works from home, important detail later, and likes to go in the backyard to smoke, so locking the doors all the time is tedious for him. He leaves the house every now and again to replenish his cigarette supply or to get lunch, and he always leaves the doors unlocked. This triggered my anxiety, as around the time we moved in there had been a robbery at one of our neighbors' houses because they left the back door open for their dog and left the house real quick to pick a child up from school. They had been gone for 10 minutes, and when they returned, the mom's jewelry box, an expensive watch, had been stolen. So obviously, I wanted the doors to be locked, especially when no one was home, even for a moment. When I'm home with someone else there, I feel a little more at ease, but at night I always triple-check to make sure the doors are locked, because he doesn't lock them then either, so I also have to sneak into the master bedroom when my parents are asleep just to make sure their stupid sliding door is locked. One day, I had gone out with a friend for the entire day, and I had reminded my parents that I would likely be back pretty late. We left my house around 11 a.m. and he dropped me off at 9 p.m. When I got out of his car, I realized my mom's car was there, but not my dad's. They only take my dad's car when they're going out for a while. I got a bit nervous, but trusted that my mom would have at least checked to make sure the doors were locked before they left, but nope. I get to the front door and looked in the small crevice of the wall in the door to see if the lock was in the wall. It wasn't. I go inside and guess what? Neither of the back doors were locked as well. I got mad, and I mean mad. I texted my mom immediately, asking how long they had been out and how long they were planning on staying out. She texts back the times and steam started blowing out of my ears. They had been gone since 2 p.m. and were likely not going to come back until near midnight. The house could have been completely stripped of literally all our belongings in that amount of time. I call her and start shouting that I had just gotten home and all the fucking doors were unlocked. She panics in response and asks if anything is out of place. After a quick run through the house, I deduced that nothing seemed to have been taken, so no one must have noticed. She sighs in relief and says that she asked my dad to lock all the doors before they left and she would talk with him about it now. When they get back, my dad is angry at me. He starts yelling at me saying this is my house, I do what I want, yada yada yada. When I protest that we could have been robbed, he decides to show off just how big his ego is and says, honey, look at me, no one would dare rob the house when I'm living in it. Everyone here is scared of me. I stood there staring at him, my jaw dropped, and it was at that moment I wondered how my mom fell for this moron. He puts on the I've won smirk and then says nobody's brave enough to rob this house. Relax. Fine. I'll relax. For the next couple of weeks I make sure to go out of the house as much as possible, usually to my previously mentioned friend's place. And I'd always take all my valuables with me, being my laptop, my 3DS and all its games, my Nintendo Switch, and some of my own expensive jewelry. The reason for this is because my parents like going out together when I'm not home, because they feel they'd be obligated to bring me with them. I had told my friend about what was going on, so they suggested leaving my valuables at his house, so I don't have to bring them with me everywhere I go, to which I happily obliged. And then it finally happened. As I mentioned before, my dad works from home. His office, it's just a large desk with 2 laptops and 2 monitors, was in the living room, near the sliding door. His work was primarily done on a laptop that costed well over $900. He had tweaked and added some things to it to make it even better than it was previously. I'm not very tech savvy, so I'm not 100% sure what exactly he did to improve it. The other laptop was about $500, which he used mostly for personal stuff. So one day, I ran out of paper in my journal and decided to walk to the local Walmart, which was about 10 minutes away, to buy a new one. My mom was at work and my dad was likely out getting lunch, so I left the empty house carelessly, leaving the doors unlocked. I took my sweet-ass time walking to that Walmart, the usual 20 to 30-minute walk to and from there taking about an hour and 15. When I got to the final crosswalk to go across the street to my community, my phone rang. It was Dad. He's in a panic, saying he couldn't find his laptops, they weren't on his desk, or in his bags or anywhere else he could have left them. He asks me if I had seen them. I tell him I saw them on your desk before I left. Are you sure they're not there? After a long pause he asks me where I am, and I told him I was walking back from Walmart. He didn't know I had taken the scenic route back home, so he thought that in the span of 20 or so minutes, someone had come into the house and unplugged both his laptops from the monitors, taking them, the chargers, and his spare cash in one of the drawers. When I got home he had gone to our neighbors' houses asking if they had seen anyone go into the house. All but one said no. That one told him that they had seen a man enter the house through the sliding door to the living room and leave, but she thought it was my dad since she'd seen him frequently leaving the house through the back doors when he goes out, especially during the past few weeks. My dad looked like half of his soul had been sucked out of his body by Satan himself when he found this out and came back, and it was lots of fun watching him explain to my mom why his laptops, spare cash, and my mom's iPad were missing. Some calls to the police were made. The neighbor described what the man was wearing to the police, and after the police questioned some other neighbors, one that lived close to the gate had said they clearly saw a man with the clothes described walking out of the community with a large bag. After about 2 weeks of searching, the police found the man, and he was arrested. The laptops and my mom's iPad were returned, but my dad's personal laptop had been factory reset, the iPad screen was cracked, and the money was gone. The doors always stayed locked after that.